Hi everybody, I'm Kelly Gay and I teach second grade here at Ridgeview School. Today I'll be reading chapter 3 and it's called Problems. Borden did not return to the owl nest as soon as he thought he would. Jimmy Olden, his best friend, got him a job after school at Mike's gas station. Mike's had become the town's west side meeting place after the government ban. Here, owl lovers ran into owl haters. They argued, shouted, and shook fists at one another. Both sides were convinced that they were right. Borden listened, but he was perfectly clear about where he stood. He polished bumper stickers that said, "I like spotted owls fried." He left the dirt on the ones that said, "Save the spotted owl." One day, his father, Leon Watson, pulled up at the gas station. He stepped out of his truck just as Paul James, the leader of the owl lovers, stepped out of his car. "Good morning, Mr. Watson," Paul James said. "Huh," Leon growled. "When are you going to care more about people than owls?" Paul James had heard this so many times he was tired of it. "The trouble is, you loggers don't see the problem," he said, his voice edgy. "The decline of the spotted owl is like a canary in a coal mine. We are being warned that the environment is not safe." "My environment is sure not safe," Leon snapped. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and the muscles in his arms looked as if they were about to go into action. Paul James, a science teacher at the high school, as well as an environmentalist, turned his attention to filling his gas tank. "The spotties," he said, "are telling us we have not properly managed our forests." "You're crazy," Leon snapped, coming toward him. "The owls aren't telling us anything. For years, the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management have been telling us to cut the old growth. They ought to know what's good for us." "Well, they don't seem to," said Paul James. He turned and faced Leon. They were warned years ago that the spotty was in trouble. Environmentalists told them they should change their policy. They didn't. The spotties kept declining until they now are a threatened species. When the environment, the water, fish, and soil began to deteriorate, the law kicked in. You guys are suffering for other people's mistakes. He turned off the pump and headed for the office to pay. "My kids are hungry," Leon said as he passed Paul James. "In my book, kids come first." He reached out and tapped the teacher on the chest. Taken by surprise, Paul James swung out his arms and caught Leon across the chin. Leon grabbed Paul's arm and wrestled him to the ground. Borden, knowing how strong his father was, ran to the telephone and dialed 911. At that moment, 2 more loggers arrived in a pickup. "Knock him out!" one of them shouted. Paul James wrestled free of Leon's grip and got to his feet, and he stepped back. Leon strode to within inches of him. His bronze-colored hair was wet with perspiration. His brown eyes glittered under shaggy brows. Borden saw his fists clench. "Pop, don't!" he yelled, and stepped between them. One of the newcomers grabbed Borden by the back of his shirt and yanked him away. A stranger walking by thought he saw the big logger picking on a boy, pushed him back, and told him to lay off. The man turned and socked the stranger. A student who was filling his tank saw Leon drive a powerful blow into Paul James's stomach. The student jumped on Leon and held his arms. Leon laughed, expanded his chest, and bent forward. The student was catapulted through the air. He landed on the grass with a thud just as the police drove up. Borden ran to help him. 2 officers stepped out of the patrol car. Leon took another poke at Paul James. Paul James returned it. An officer grabbed him. The other took Leon by the arm and pulled him back, and the fighting stopped. "Hey, I'm sorry," Paul James said to Leon. Borden looked at his father. He hoped his dad would apologize. He did not. He shook his fist at Paul James. Careful, Leon, Captain Ryan said. I don't want to have to arrest you for disorderly conduct. I'm not disorderly, Leon said. Society is. On his way to the office to pay for his gas, Leon gave Borden a friendly poke in the ribs. Arrest that man, the stranger shouted and pointed to Leon. If you don't, I will. I'll make a citizen's arrest. The two officers looked at each other helplessly. Fights and short tempers were common in Fresta since the ban, but no crimes had been committed. This spat was over. Both men were calm. The policeman did not want to arrest Leon Watson or Paul James. The stranger sensed this. I'm coming with you to the precinct and see that you arrest them. If you don't, I will. We can't put up with fights and brawls every day. All right, said Sergeant Ryan. I'll do it. I'll deliver a warrant for his arrest tonight. He's not going anywhere. Well, what about him? Said one of the loggers, pointing at Paul James. He started it. Him too, said Captain Ryan. He got into his patrol car and slammed the door. The policeman drove off. The stranger followed. Tough times, Mike said when Leon paid for his gas. He shook his head. It's really terrible not to have a job. Leon nodded and strode to his truck. He slammed the door. Paul James had paid for his gas and driven off. Leon followed. Borden watched his pop turn right on the main street and head towards home. He was upset. His father was going to be arrested, and it was not fair. He thought of the owl on the mountain and knew it was time to carry out his plan.